Hi, I'm Phil Constantine. On this episode of Travels with Phil, we're going to be talking about the Interstate Freeway System, how it was created, and the logic for all those numbers. Well, I do a lot of traveling, but it's more than just that. I was a highway patrol officer for 20 years. So let's look at a little bit of the history of the freeways. The first one, Intercontinental, was in 1913. Well, in 1919, the U.S. Army sent out a convoy of military trucks from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, including a lieutenant colonel named Dwight Eisenhower, who came along. Well, you can see here the roads were really terrible. There was no such thing as an organized system of roadways. The 3,000-mile trip took 62 days to complete to travel across the country. This first time there was a big convoy. In fact, they averaged between 5 and 15 miles an hour on the roads out there. There was no consistency. Went through prairies, deserts. This long convoy was trying to see if it could actually be done. Now, while individuals had done it, it wasn't something that you could rely on. So there's lots of people in this particular convoy, and you can see here how bad the roads were. So if you were trying to get from New York to the West Coast, or even St. Louis to the West Coast, or vice versa, it was very difficult. In some cases, the road just barely existed at all. They even had a bulldozer out there to help pull them through the mud. That's how bad some of these locations were. So this is what the country was looking like. And finally, after 62 days, they made it into San Francisco to what was called Lincoln Park. Now, Eisenhower, learning from World War II, where he was the supreme commander for Allied forces, decided, we should do something about this. And that's what helped create the Interstate Highway System. As of 2023, there's 46,000 miles on the freeway, and the numbers are not randomly assigned. There is some logic as to how they are named and as to how they are measured. And there's two kinds of freeways, primary and auxiliary. The even and odd number freeways determine which direction they're going. So the north and south ones are odd. Number 5 along the west coast starts in San Diego, goes up to Canada. Then number 15 also starts in San Diego, going up through Canada, this time through Montana. Then number 25 starts in southern New Mexico, heads up to Montana through Colorado and Wyoming. 35 starts on the Mexican border in Laredo, goes all the way up to Duluth, Minnesota. Number 45 is one of the few that are only within one state, from Houston to Dallas. Number 55 starts right around New Orleans, goes all the way up to Chicago or vice versa. Number 65, going from Alabama in the Mobile area up to Gary, Indiana, almost Chicago. 75 starts in Miami, goes all the way up to the Michigan and Canada border. Number 85 starts in Montgomery, Alabama to Petersburg, Virginia. And the last one along the East Coast is 95 from Miami all the way up to Maine. So let's look at the east and west routes. The 10 starts in Los Angeles, goes all the way to Jacksonville, Florida through Texas. Number 20 also starts in Texas. This is in West Texas, goes over to South Carolina. Number 30 starts near Fort Worth, goes over to Little Rock, Arkansas. 40 starts in California, heads all the way over to Wilmington, North Carolina. There's no 50 or 60, by the way. Then number 70 starts in Utah, heads over to Maryland. Number 80 back in California and San Francisco, all the way over to New Jersey, almost New York. And finally, the longest one at over 3,000 miles is number 90, which starts in Seattle and goes all the way over to Boston. There are lots of other two-digit freeway numbers in addition to the ones ending in 0 and 5, which are primary. Three-digit numbers usually are loops, bypasses, or spurs. For example, 210, 610, E10 will all be loops or bypasses connected to the I-10. And there are several duplicate freeway numbers out there because there's only so many numbers that can be used. So if they're not too close to each other, they will be repeated over again. So here's some examples. The 410 bypass, which is in Linwood, Washington State. This is the 405 bypass in Portland, Oregon, the second state that's got a 405. And here's the third one in Los Angeles, California. So 3 states have a 405. And here's an example of the 610 loop in Houston. This is the loop that goes completely around the freeway connected to the 10. And the 610 loop in New Orleans. They don't touch each other, but they're repeated. Exit numbers start at the southernmost or westernmost part of the freeway, and they go up as you continue to the east or the north. So that way you can figure out an exact spot, and it's consistent throughout the United States. Example 1B here, this is on the 5 just north of the U.S.-Mexico border. This is 796 on I-5 at the California-Oregon border. And then we have exit number 13 here, looking at I-10 in Texas, not far from New Mexico. and then the 860, a long one in Texas, not too far from the Louisiana border. So if your GPS were to fail just by using a freeway exit sign, you could have a pretty good idea, actually, as to where you're located. What makes the interstate system different than other freeways and roadways are the standards that are applied to all of the roadways that are built to be an interstate system. Basically, there are lots of criteria. They have to have controlled access. That means no intersections, no driveways coming into the roadway, basically only on and off ramps, no intersections, no lights, no signals, that kind of thing. They have to be set up for a minimum speed, such as 50 miles an hour in the mountains and urban areas, 70 in the other areas. A maximum grade, and while it varies a little bit depending on exactly what the terrain is, no more than 7% and less than that in most areas. A minimum number of lanes, basically 2 lanes in each direction. A minimum lane width of a 12 feet area. Minimum shoulder widths, 4 feet on the left, 10 feet on the right, a little bit less in the mountains. The lanes actually have to have some sloping, which means that way the rain will drain off the roadway. Usually there's also a minimum width, 50 feet in rural areas or 10 feet in urban areas with a barrier. And vertical clearances, usually at least 16 feet as you're going through areas, depending on whether it's urban or mountain. And it can be a little bit less than that if there's an alternative route available that is a little bit higher than that. In that case, it could be 14 some odd. But generally speaking, it has to meet all of these criteria in order to qualify to be an interstate highway or an interstate freeway system.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Yes, indeed, freeway signs do get changed, and this is an example of one up in Colorado.
Yep, just about to go out of Colorado here, a city called Dove Creek.
Yes, indeed, there really is a U.S. Highway 666.
Yes, indeed, people didn't like living on the Devil's Freeway or the highway, so they changed it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please feel free to make comments below as long as the language is family friendly. And if you like this video, please click on the thumbs up button below. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the circle with my picture in it in the lower right-hand corner of the video. The arrow is pointing at it now. And once you have subscribed, you can be notified of when I have a new video posted by clicking on the bell icon in the description field below the video. Thanks again for watching.